Rain hammered the Fifth Avenue sidewalk that morning, turning the gutters into black mirrors that reflected the steel sky and the blur of yellow cabs. Sophia Hawthorne stepped out of her building at precisely 9:47, the doorman holding the door with his usual murmured, "Mrs. Hawthorne," but she barely registered it. 6 months had passed since the funeral, since the closed casket at St. Patrick's, the endless condolences, the silence that had settled over the penthouse like dust. 42 years of marriage to Alexander Hawthorne, the man who had turned a small data security startup into a Wall Street titan, reduced to a granite headstone in Westchester, and a name on quarterly reports now run by their son. She needed groceries. Ordinary life demanded it, even when grief made every errand feel like wading through concrete. The upscale market on the corner smelled of rain-damp wool coats and fresh ground coffee as she pushed through the revolving doors. The aisles were quiet mid-morning, a few nannies with strollers, an elderly man comparing olive oils. Sophia moved mechanically toward the canned goods, her coat still dripping onto the marble tile. She reached for the tomato sauce, thick basil, the brand Alex had always insisted on for the rare nights he cooked pasta himself. Her fingers closed around the glass jar, just as a low voice grumbled from the next aisle over. Inflated prices again. Ridiculous. The timbre hit her like a physical force, deep, clipped, the same cadence that once sealed billion-dollar deals over speakerphone at 2 a.m. Her hand froze. The jar slipped from numb fingers and shattered on the floor, red sauce splattering across the white marble in jagged arcs like arterial spray. A gasp rippled through nearby shoppers. An employee hurried over with a yellow caution sign and a mop, asking if she was all right. Sophia didn't answer. She turned slowly. 3 shelves away stood a man in a charcoal overcoat, basket hooked over one arm, squinting at a can of soup. Broad shoulders slightly rounded now with age, salt and pepper hair still worn the same way, tousled, as if he'd run a hand through it moments ago. The faint white scar curved above his left eyebrow, souvenir from that Aspen ski trip in '98 when he'd laughed off the fall and kissed her in the snow. "Alexander, Alex," she whispered, then louder, voice cracking the quiet. "Alex," he looked up. Brown eyes met hers, familiar yet blank with polite confusion, no recognition, no flicker of guilt or panic. "I'm sorry," he said evenly, the same measured tone he'd used to calm volatile board members. "You must have mistaken me for someone else." The words landed like a slap. Sophia stepped forward, legs unsteady on the slick tile. "No. It's me, Sophia, your wife." He retreated half a step. Alex never retreated, not in negotiations, not in arguments. "My name is Marcus Reed. I don't know you, ma'am." Her pulse thundered in her ears. She fumbled for her phone, swiped to the last photo she'd kept accessible. The company gala 2 years earlier, his arm around her waist, champagne flutes raised. His lopsided smile caught mid-laugh as he blamed the valet for their late arrival. "Look," she said, thrusting the screen toward him. "You toasted to our future that night." He glanced at the image. His jaw tightened for a fraction of a second, almost imperceptible, then relaxed into neutral courtesy. "Never seen it before. You seem upset. Perhaps you should sit down." His hand settled on her shoulder, warm, familiar pressure, the same grip that had steadied her through boardroom crises and late-night worries. She stared at his fingers. The bent ring finger from that college rugby tackle, the one she'd kissed after every victory. "Show me your hand," she said. He frowned but extended it without protest. The crooked knuckle stared back at her, unchanged. The world tilted. Sauce still seeped across the floor, pooling around her shoes. Whispers started, "Poor woman, hallucinating, call security," but they sounded distant, underwater. "I have to go," he said, turning toward the checkout. "Take care of yourself." He walked away with the deliberate stride she knew so well, shoulders back, basket balanced precisely. Sophia remained rooted amid the cleanup, watching him pay cash, folding bills with that characteristic thumb press, then load bags into a black SUV parked at the curb. Heavy items first, perishables last, always methodical. She memorized the license plate without thinking. Outside, rain lashed her face as she followed in her own car, heart slamming against her ribs. Traffic crawled. She stayed 3 vehicles back, windshield wipers beating like a metronome. They wound north into the Upper East Side, past doormen under awnings, past brownstones with ivy-climbing wrought iron railings. He pulled into a driveway on a quiet block, killed the engine. A woman opened the door, mid-50s, elegant dark bob, cashmere sweater the color of oatmeal. She kissed his cheek. 2 children burst out, 8 and 10, maybe, climbing his legs, shouting, "Grandpa," as he hoisted bags and laughed that rich, uneven laugh that had once closed deals and quieted her fears. Sophia parked 3 blocks away, engine off, tears mixing with rainwater on her cheeks. 42 years, 6 months of mourning a ghost, and here he was, alive, domestic, belonging to someone else's family. She sat there until the porch light flicked on against the gray afternoon, until the windows glowed warm from within. Then she started the car and drove home, the license plate burned into her memory like a brand. That night the penthouse felt colder than ever, Central Park's lights mocking her through rain-streaked glass. She stared at the blurry photos on her phone, the brownstone, the SUV, his profile mid-laugh, and one question seared through the numbness. If Alex was alive, who lay in his grave, and why had Julian never breathed a word? The penthouse was silent except for the low hum of the refrigerator and the occasional creak of settling beams. Sophia sat at the marble kitchen island under a single pendant light, the rest of the apartment dark. Alex's favorite scotch bottle stood untouched beside her, amber catching the glow from her phone screen. Her wedding band felt heavier than usual against the cool stone. She had spread the photos across the surface like evidence in a cold case. The brownstone facade with ivy curling up the bricks, the black SUV's license plate captured through rain-streaked glass, Alex's profile as he laughed with the two children clinging to his legs. She zoomed in on each detail, the scar above the eyebrow, the crooked ring finger, the precise way his hair caught the streetlight. Then she opened the old albums on her tablet for comparison. Their Hampton's wedding, salt wind whipping her veil while he grinned like he'd already won the world. The night Hawthorne Secure crossed its first billion in valuation, champagne fizzing as he pulled her into a victory kiss. Aspen family trips when Julian was small, building snow forts until his mittens froze stiff. No hallucination could replicate these consistencies. The facts aligned too perfectly. At 3:14 a.m. she dialed Julian. London was 6 hours ahead, 9:14 there. The line rang 6 times before he answered, voice thick with sleep. "Mom, it's the middle of the night here. I saw him today, alive, in a market on 5th, a sharp inhale." Then silence stretched so long she thought the call had dropped. "Stay where you are," he said finally. "I'm booking the first flight." He arrived 18 hours later, suit jacket creased from the red-eye, eyes shadowed. He let himself in with his key, found her still at the island, photos arranged in neat rows. He crossed the room without speaking, pulled her into a hug. His cologne was the same sharp citrus Alex had worn. She let him hold her for 3 seconds, then stepped back. He studied the spread of images. Color drained from his face. He picked up the close-up of the bent finger, stared at it. "He looks like Dad," he said quietly. "He is Dad." Julian set the photo down carefully. "We buried him, closed casket. The crash, did you see the body?" "No, they said it was too damaged. Drive me to the brownstone, tonight." "I need you to see him yourself." He rubbed his temples. "Mom, this isn't Julian, now." They drove in silence through evening traffic, headlights cutting through drizzle. He parked across the street from the ivy-covered brownstone. Lights glowed behind lace curtains. They waited. At 7:38 the front door opened. Alex stepped out in a wool coat, keys jingling, heading for the SUV. Julian's breath caught audibly. His hands tightened on the steering wheel until the leather creaked. Color left his face entirely. Tears welled, spilled over before he could blink them away. "Mom, I'm so sorry." The words carried the weight of confession. "Tell me everything." He stared straight ahead. "Dad didn't die. He has another family, 20 years. Alina, the woman you saw, and her daughter's children. It started during the London expansions, an affair that became more. He wanted to be there full-time." Sophia felt the air leave her lungs in a slow, controlled exhale. "How long have you known?" 4 years. "I found duplicate ledgers in the London office. 2 sets of household expenses, 2 trusts. He came to me one night after you'd gone to bed here. Said divorce would destroy the company. You'd take half in a settlement. Courts would drag everything public. Stock would crater. Thousands of jobs, half of what we built together." Julian nodded, miserable. "He said if he disappeared cleanly, the assets would pass to me. No probate fight. He'd already moved pieces into new accounts under Marcus Reed. The rest would flow quietly. He promised I'd set up a trust for you. Penthouse stays yours. Monthly allowance so you'd never worry." "An allowance," she repeated. The word tasted like metal shavings. "I tried to talk him out of it. For months, but he kept saying the truth would hurt you worse than grief, that you'd heal believing it was an accident. And the body in the casket, an executive with terminal cancer, no close family. Dad paid for his final months in comfort, paid the sister to confirm identification. They staged the jet malfunction, swapped documents at the morgue. Crash was catastrophic, dental records matched after alteration. Closed casket. No one questioned it. You let me mourn a stranger. I thought it would be kinder. You'd inherit without scandal. The company would stay intact. Kinder." She let the word hang between them. The car felt smaller, air thick with the scent of wet wool and betrayal. "Take me home." He drove without argument. Back in the garage, he reached for her hand. She pulled away. Inside the penthouse, she walked straight to the study, closed the door behind her. Julian stood in the hallway a long moment, then left without another word. She sat alone at the desk where Alex used to review deal memos every Sunday. City lights glittered beyond the windows like distant stars. 42 years of loyalty, 6 months of grief for a lie, but lies don't breathe, and she was finished breathing for one. 3 days later, Sophia walked into a narrow office on 47th Street and told the private investigator 4 words: "My billionaire husband is dead. Prove he's not." The folder he slid across the desk didn't just confirm the lie, it exposed the son she thought she knew. The investigator's office occupied the third floor of a narrow building squeezed between a dry cleaner and a kosher deli. He quoted his fee. Sophia wired it from her phone without hesitation. "I want the full trail," she told him. "Bank movements, property deeds, phone records, proof this was planned." "1 week," Harlan said. "I'll need access to any accounts or documents you can provide." She gave him what she had: old statements, Julian's contact at the London office, the funeral home's name. Then she left. For 7 days she moved through the city like a ghost in her own life. Board meetings at Hawthorne Holdings headquarters. Julian now at the head of the long glass table, voice steady as he presented quarterly projections, fielding questions with the same measured, calm Alex once used. Lunches with old friends who still squeezed her hand and said, "You're handling this so gracefully." Nights alone in the penthouse, windows open to the Hudson's cold breath, staring at the skyline Alex had once promised to conquer. She returned to the brownstone at varying hours, early mornings with a scarf pulled low, dusk with sunglasses, pretending to check messages while parked across the street. She learned his routines. Departed at 7:42 a.m. in the black SUV, returned by 6:10 p.m., weekends in Riverside Park pushing swings or at a corner cafe on Columbus Avenue reading the Times. Sundays the family walked to the neighborhood Episcopal church, heads bowed during the hymns. She watched Alina rest her hand on his arm the way Sophia once had after tense negotiations. Watched him smile with the unguarded ease of a man convinced his past was sealed in marble. It wasn't. Harlan called on the 7th day. "Come in, I have the package." The folder was thick, bound with black electrical tape. Sophia sat in the same chair and opened it methodically. First document, a birth certificate for Marcus Reed, issued 2019, 3 years before the crash. No prior records under that name. Fabricated identity. Bank statements. New accounts opened under Reed post-crash. $2.3 billion transferred in layered transactions from Hawthorne shell companies. Authorizations bearing signatures resembling Julian's, but with telltale variations in loop height and pressure. Variations Sophia had watched form over decades of signing holiday cards and permission slips. Property records. The brownstone purchased 6 years earlier under Reed, mortgage satisfied from an offshore trust. Utility bills overlapped with their Hamptons summer house. Bills addressed to Alexander Hawthorne at both locations for 2 decades. Phone logs. Hundreds of calls between Alex's private line and Julian's in the 18 months preceding the crash. Dozens more in the weeks after. Calls placed while Sophia wandered the penthouse touching Alex's untouched shirts, while she cried into pillows still carrying faint traces of his cologne. Julian hadn't merely known, he had facilitated. She closed the folder with careful precision. "What now is your decision?" Harlan said. She stood. "Thank you." Outside, pale November sunlight slanted between buildings. Taxis honked, pedestrians hurried, but Sophia felt only the cold clarity of purpose settling into her bones. This was no longer grief or personal betrayal. It was about dignity, about ensuring 42 years could not be erased by forged documents and hidden accounts. About forcing truth into existence, on paper, in courtrooms, where no one could dismiss her as delusional. They had mistaken her silence for surrender. They were wrong. The next morning, Sophia invited Julian to lunch at the old Italian restaurant on 57th Street, the one where she and Alex had celebrated every major deal. She slipped a digital recorder into her purse. When he arrived, relief flooded his face. He still believed she was the mother who would always forgive. He had no idea the device would capture every word needed to end his freedom. The restaurant on 57th Street retained its familiar dimness. Red-checkered tablecloths, candle stubs flickering in Chianti bottles, the low murmur of midday conversations. Sophia arrived 20 minutes early and requested the same corner booth where she and Alex had toasted the launch of Hawthorne Secure 2 decades earlier. The waiter recognized her, offered a quiet Mrs. Hawthorne, and left the menus without small talk. She slipped the slim digital recorder into the side pocket of her leather purse, tested it beneath the table, red light blinked once, steady, then ordered sparkling water with lemon. Her pulse remained even. For the first time in months, anticipation felt like focus rather than dread. Julian entered at 12:32, scanning the room until he spotted her. His suit hung looser than before, dark circles shadowed his eyes. Relief crossed his face when she raised a hand in greeting. He slid into the booth opposite her. "Mom, thank God you called. I've been checking my phone every hour." You didn't respond to any messages. I needed space to think, she said, voice soft but level. I'm ready to understand now, so I can decide what comes next. He exhaled, shoulders dropping. Anything. Ask me whatever you need. The waiter returned. Julian ordered pasta primavera without looking at the menu. Sophia chose a Caesar salad. Simple choices. Neutral ground. She let him speak first while the food arrived. He described the strain of the past 6 months, sleepless nights, guilt that followed him into meetings, the fear that the truth would destroy what remained of their family. She nodded, listened, asked gentle follow-ups. When did the planning begin in earnest? She asked after the plates were set down. 10 months before the crash. He flew to London late one night after you were asleep here. Told me he couldn't sustain 2 lives anymore. Elena was expecting another grandchild. He wanted to be present for all of it. But divorce meant you'd claim half the company, half the portfolio, half the trusts. Public filings, court battles, stock plunge. He said the empire we'd built would collapse under the weight. We built, she corrected quietly. He winced. He said disappearance was the only clean exit. Assets passed to me automatically. No division. He'd already begun routing funds to Marcus Reed accounts. The rest would transfer gradually. He swore I'd protect you, set up a lifetime trust, keep the penthouse in your name, ensure you had more than enough. More than enough, she echoed. Julian looked at his plate. I argued against it, repeatedly, but he insisted the truth would shatter you worse than grief, that believing in an accident would let you heal. And the body, an executive pancreatic cancer, stage 4, no immediate family. Dad covered his final care, arranged private hospice, paid the sisters $75,000 to confirm identity. They staged the jet failure, swapped morgue records. Crash damage was total. Dental matched after adjustment. Closed casket. No one pushed. You authorized the transfers. Some, mostly post-crash. Divestitures of non-core assets to keep the balance sheet clean. I thought once everything settled, I could correct it, increase your share. Make it right. She reached into her purse as though searching for a napkin. Pressed record again. Confirmation light steady. How much moved in total? $2.3 billion from holding companies and private trusts. Portions went to Alina for the brownstone, education funds for the grandchildren. The bulk stayed under Reed. He planned to send you regular payments, discreet, untraceable, but said it was safer to wait. Any large movement risked triggering insurance audits. He never sent anything. No, Julian's voice cracked. He kept delaying. Where are the records now? Duplicates, emails, confirmations. He hesitated, then answered. In my office safe at headquarters. Bottom drawer, combination 14-32-9. I kept copies in case anything went sideways. She nodded once. They finished the meal in near silence. He spoke a little more of guilt that woke him at 3 a.m., of wanting to repair what he could. She listened without interruption. When the check arrived, she paid. In the parking garage, he hugged her awkwardly. I love you, Mom, he said against her shoulder. I know, she answered. She drove straight home. From the kitchen island, she emailed the audio file to her attorney. The phone rang within 4 minutes. Crystal clear, the attorney said. Full confession to conspiracy, fraud, forgery, aiding identity theft. Combined with Harlan's documentation, the layered transfers, fake birth certificate, overlapping logs, this is prosecutable. Airtight? What timeline? Criminal complaint filed this afternoon. Fraud division will move quickly, warrants by morning. Julian taken quietly, no media if we can help it. Reed identity invalidated today. Accounts frozen. Assets locked pending restitution. Sophia sat at the marble island where Alex once spread Sunday deal memos. And Alex, arrest at the brownstone. Elena questioned on site. If she had no knowledge of the fraud, she's released. Children protected either way. Sophia thanked her and ended the call. For the first time in 6 months, the penthouse did not feel like a mausoleum. It felt like the starting line of something she would finally run herself. The next morning at 6:12 a.m. the attorney's call came. Warrants issued. Julian in custody 20 minutes ago, no resistance. Teams are en route to the brownstone now. But before the cuffs closed on Alex, Sophia needed to look him in the eye one final time, not for explanations, but for the closure she would grant herself. The phone rang at 6:12 a.m., pulling Sophia from the first unbroken sleep she'd had in months. She answered before the second ring, already sitting up in the dark bedroom. Sophia, her attorney said, tone measured but final. Warrants executed. Julian was taken into custody 20 minutes ago at his apartment. No resistance. He's being processed downtown. Sophia switched on the bedside lamp. The room remained still. No coffee maker starting automatically. No faint sound of Alex shaving in the adjoining bath. Only the distant city hum filtering through insulated glass. And Alex, teams are en route to the brownstone. 2 detectives, 1 patrol unit. Low-profile approach, no lights, no sirens. Elena will be interviewed on the premises. If she had no awareness of the fraud elements, she's likely released today. Children remain with her pending any contrary evidence. Social services on standby as precaution. The identity, Marcus Reed designation invalidated as of 5:45 this morning. Birth certificate, license, social security number, all flagged fraudulent. Bank accounts frozen nationwide. Property liens placed on the brownstone and any linked holdings. Hawthorne assets transferred under Reed are seized pending forensic accounting and restitution. Sophia stood and walked to the window. Frost rimmed the edges of the glass. The Hudson below looked black and motionless under the pre-dawn sky. What charges for Julian? Conspiracy to commit fraud, forgery of financial instruments, aiding and abetting identity theft, financial exploitation of an elder. The recording plus Harlan's documentation makes the case strong. DA is offering a plea track, 5 to 7 years if he cooperates fully, potentially less with good behavior. He will serve time. Sophia closed her eyes briefly. He understood the consequences when he signed. Yes, the attorney replied gently. He did. They covered logistics, media containment strategy, asset freeze notifications, next court dates. When the call ended, Sophia remained at the window, watching the city wake in increments. That afternoon, she drove alone to the private mausoleum in Westchester. The grass around the headstone had thickened since the funeral. The carved name looked smaller under winter light. She placed a single white orchid, Alex's favorite, on the granite, then turned and walked back to the car without a word spoken to the grave. Back in Manhattan, the penthouse greeted her with ordinary quiet. The soft click of the thermostat adjusting, the faint scent of the eucalyptus plant on the entry table. For the first time, the space felt neither haunted nor empty. It felt like territory reclaimed. She made tea, carried the cup to the living room sofa, and opened her laptop. She searched not for traces of Alex, but for possibilities. A watercolor workshop in Chelsea starting next month. A women's memoir book club meeting bi-weekly in the village. A short solo trip to somewhere warm where she could walk beaches without agenda. The phone stayed silent the rest of the day. No frantic calls from relatives. No messages from Julian. Only the steady rhythm of her own breathing, calm, even present. 3 weeks later, the attorney's voice came gently over the line at dawn. Sophia, Alex suffered a massive heart attack in the holding facility last night. He didn't survive. You remain listed as next of kin. Before deciding what to do with the ashes, she knew she had to walk through that brownstone one last time, not as his wife, but as the woman he had tried to erase. Mid-morning sunlight had burned off the frost by the time Sophia turned onto the quiet Upper East Side block. She drove directly to the brownstone, no detours, no scarf pulled low, no sunglasses. She pulled into the driveway behind the black SUV, its rear bumper still bearing the familiar dent from a parking mishap years earlier. She sat for 30 seconds with the engine off, hands steady on the wheel, listening to the soft chime of wind against the porch. She stepped out carrying a thick envelope of court-stamped documents, asset freeze orders, identity invalidation decree, fraud complaint, restitution claim. No rage, no weapon, only precision. She rang the bell. Elena opened the door in a soft gray sweater, hair still damp from a shower. Polite surprise shifted to wary recognition when she saw Sophia's face. The same face that must have appeared in hidden photos or in the way Alex sometimes stared too long at empty corners. "Can I help you?" Elena asked, voice cautious. "I'm here for Marcus," Sophia said evenly. "It's urgent." Elena glanced over her shoulder toward the back of the house. "He's in the yard. Come in." Sophia followed her through the living room. Scattered toys on a wool rug, family photos on the mantel showing Alex with the children at various ages. Beach days, birthdays, ordinary moments Sophia had never witnessed. Her stomach tightened once, sharply, then steadied. The sliding glass door to the backyard stood ajar. Alex stood near the fence in rolled shirt sleeves, pruning shears in hand, trimming overgrown boxwood. He turned at the sound of footsteps. The shears slipped from his fingers and clattered onto the stone patio. "Sophia," he breathed. The name sounded rusty, unused. She extended the envelope. "Legal documents. You need to read them." His hands trembled as he took the packet. He opened it slowly, eyes scanning. Invalidation of Marcus Reed, active fraud charges, asset freeze across all accounts, arrest warrant already issued, restitution demand for concealed marital property and insurance proceeds. Blood drained from his face. He looked up, eyes wide with something close to disbelief. "What have you done?" he asked hoarsely. "I told the truth." He glanced toward the house. "Does she? She knows now." Elena appeared in the doorway behind Sophia, confusion hardening into dread. "Marcus, what's happening?" He couldn't speak. Sophia turned to her. "I'm his legal wife. We were married for 42 years. The man you know as Marcus Reed does not exist. He faked his death 6 months ago to abandon our marriage and begin again here, with you, with your family." The silence pressed in, thick and airless. Elena stared at him. You told me you were widowed, that you had no one left. I had someone, Sophia said, meeting Alina's eyes. Me. Alex sank to his knees on the cold patio stone. The pruning shears lay forgotten beside him. Sophia, please, he rasped. Let me explain. It wasn't supposed to, no. She cut the words cleanly. You chose deception. You chose theft. You chose to erase me. And you allowed our son to help you. Distant sirens grew louder, approaching without haste. They're coming, he said, voice breaking. Yes. Sophia turned to leave. Alina remained frozen in the doorway, one hand pressed to her mouth, tears beginning to track down her cheeks. Sophia, he called after her, still kneeling. For the years we had, for what we were. She paused at the threshold but did not turn. What we were was real to me, she said. That's why you will never comprehend what you destroyed. She walked through the house, past the toys, past the photographs, past the scent of coffee lingering in the kitchen, and out the front door. Two unmarked cars turned onto the street as she reached her own vehicle. Detectives stepped out, calm, professional. One gave her a brief nod. She returned it. She did not wait to watch them cuff him. She did not need to see his face when the charges were read. She had seen enough. She drove away steadily, the brownstone shrinking in the rearview mirror. No tears, no shaking. Only the quiet certainty that arrives when the final deception collapses. Back in the penthouse, she sat at the kitchen island with a cup of tea that cooled untouched. The space was still. For the first time in 42 years and 6 months, it belonged to her alone. 3 weeks later, the attorney's call arrived at dawn. Sophia, Alex suffered a heart attack in the holding facility last night. He didn't make it. You're still listed as next of kin. Before the ashes could be scattered, one final envelope arrived, hand-delivered, no stamp, her name in Alina's precise script. Inside, his wedding ring and a note that would force her to decide what forgiveness truly costs. The call arrived at 5:47 a.m., 3 weeks after the brownstone arrest. Sophia was already awake, seated at the kitchen island with tea gone cold, the first gray light pressing against the windows. She answered on the second ring. Sophia, her attorney said, voice careful. Alex suffered a massive coronary in the holding facility last night. Pronounced dead at 4:20 a.m., you remain next of kin. The statement landed without shattering anything. No sharp intake of breath, no sudden tears. Only a long, measured exhale. How? She asked. Sudden cardiac arrest. CPR attempted, paramedics called. Nothing revived him. He was alone in the cell, no indication of foul play. Sophia stared at the empty chair across the island, the one Alex had occupied every morning with his newspaper and black coffee. I see you're entitled to make final arrangements, the attorney continued. Burial, cremation, whatever you choose. The county covers basic costs if needed, but given your status, cremate him, she said. Scatter the ashes at sea. No service, no marker. A longer pause. You're certain? Yes. He asked for you again through the public defender days after the arrest. Wanted one last conversation. I know, she replied. I declined. The attorney did not argue. I'll prepare the paperwork. The medical examiner will release the body after standard autopsy. I can arrange direct transfer to a crematory, or you can collect the remains yourself. Thank you, she ended the call. The kitchen clock ticked softly. Sophia remained motionless, listening to the house settle, the faint refrigerator hum, the distant rumble of an early delivery truck on the avenue. Ordinary sounds, life proceeding. She rose, walked to the hall console, and opened the drawer where the wedding photo lay face down. She lifted it, traced the courthouse steps with one finger, then carried it to the service balcony overlooking the Hudson. The river moved slate gray under the rising light. She knelt beside the narrow planter box that once held herbs Alex never watered, dug a small hole in the soil, and placed the photo inside, glass side down. She covered it with earth and pressed the surface flat. No ceremony, no spoken words. She returned inside, brewed fresh tea, and drank it slowly while sunlight turned frost on the windows to glittering beads. By noon, the attorney called again. Autopsy complete, no anomalies. Crematory will have the remains ready in 48 hours. I've arranged a quiet scattering service at the coast, no witnesses unless you request them. I don't, Sophia said. Understood. The restitution hearing is scheduled for next month. Alina has agreed to sell the brownstone and remit proceeds as ordered. Remaining concealed assets will be appraised and divided, half to you outright, half held in trust until Julian's sentence concludes. You'll have financial security, more than enough. Sophia thanked her. That afternoon, she drove to the private dock where Alex once moored his yacht. The sign still read Hawthorne Marine Holdings, though the division had been sold months earlier. She parked by the water and watched the Hudson carry small flows of ice downstream. She did not enter the building. She sat on a bench until the sun lowered, letting salt air fill her lungs. When she returned home, a single message waited from Julian, rooted through the jail system. Mom, I heard about Dad. I'm sorry for everything. She read the words several times, then typed, "I know." She deleted the thread and powered off the phone. That evening, she lit a fire in the living room hearth, something they hadn't done since Julian was small. She sat on the rug with a blanket and watched the flames burn down to embers. No ghosts rose from the ashes, no shadows clung to the corners, only warmth, quiet, a home that had finally become hers. The next morning she woke to sunlight slanting across hardwood floors. She made coffee, opened every curtain wide. The penthouse breathed with her, steady, calm, alive. For the first time in 42 years and 6 months, the day ahead belonged entirely to her. Months later, as restitution payments began arriving and new routines took root in the penthouse, a small package appeared on the doorstep. No return address, only her name in Alina's careful handwriting. Inside, Alex's old wedding ring and a single folded note that would require her to confront the final fragment of the man she had once loved. Spring arrived in tentative stages, green shoots breaking through rooftop planters, longer light turning the penthouse windows golden by mid-morning. The space had shifted with the season. Linen curtains the color of sea glass now framed the living room, fresh herbs thrived on the kitchen sill, and the mantel held only 3 quiet items: a smooth river stone from the Hudson Overlook, a watercolor postcard from her Thursday painting class, and a single photograph of Julian at his college graduation, smiling before secrets took root. Restitution deposits arrived monthly, steady transfers covering maintenance, utilities, and a modest surplus she banked without immediate plans. The Hawthorne empire had been dismantled in pieces. Her portion settled quietly, sufficient for simplicity and choice. She walked the river path each morning, 5 miles now, pace unhurried. The air carried damp earth and new leaves. Thoughts of Alex surfaced occasionally during those miles, not with bitterness, but with detached curiosity. The man who had burned steaks on the grill and laughed at bad jokes, versus the one who constructed a second life and let her grieve a stranger. Perhaps both existed. The question no longer disturbed her sleep. One Saturday in late April, a small envelope rested on the doorstep. No stamp, no postmark, only her name in Alina's neat, feminine script. Her pulse rose for a single beat, then settled. She carried it inside, set it on the kitchen island, and brewed tea before opening it. The deliberate pause felt necessary. Inside lay a 4x6 photograph. Alex older, grayer, seated on the brownstone grass, 2 children on his lap, one giggling, the other offering a flower to his face. His smile was unguarded, lopsided, the same one she had once loved. Behind the photo, a single folded note on plain white paper. "Sophia, he wanted you to have this, for closure. In the quiet moments he spoke of you, not with regret, but with a distance, as though you were a chapter he had finished, yet never fully released. I believed the story he told me. I loved the man I knew. I did not know the truth until that day on the porch. The children still ask about him. I tell them he had to go away. They are too young for more. I am selling the brownstone. We will move closer to my family. The sale proceeds will fulfill the court order. I kept nothing that was not mine. I do not ask for forgiveness. I only wanted you to see this photograph, not as justification, but as proof that some part of him remained the man you married." Alina Sophia read the note twice, then set it beside the photograph. She studied the image, the children's trusting faces, Alex's protective hand on the smaller back, the genuine smile in a moment untouched by deception. The scene was real, the affection was real, and yet, she carried both items to the service balcony. The soil over the buried wedding photo had greened with new growth. She knelt, dug a shallow hole beside it, and placed the new photograph face down. She laid Alina's note on top. No words spoken, no tears shed. She covered them with earth and tamped it level. Standing, she surveyed the balcony, planters needing weeding, railing needing fresh paint, the dust-covered telescope Alex once used to watch river traffic. She might clean it, she might donate it. The decision was hers. Inside, she brewed fresh tea and sat at the island. Sunlight pooled on the floor in warm ovals. Distant children's laughter drifted up from the avenue, ordinary, weightless. She opened her laptop and searched for a coastal cottage rental in Maine, 4 weeks in summer, just her. No itinerary, only walking, reading, listening to waves. She booked it. That evening she called Julian. He answered on the second ring, voice cautious. "Mom, Julian," silence stretched briefly. "I received the letter about Dad," he said. "The ashes, scattered at sea," she replied. "No service." He exhaled unevenly. "I understand." Another pause. "I'm sorry," he said again, smaller, more honest than before. "I know." They spoke briefly of his job at the hardware store, the stray cat that now slept on his fire escape, her painting class. Ordinary details, safe ground. When the call ended, she felt neither lighter nor heavier, only present. Later, she walked to the balcony once more before dark. The buried items remained hidden beneath soil and time, no marker needed. She stood until dusk softened the sky to lavender. Then she went inside, locked the door, and turned on a single lamp. The penthouse settled around her, calm, steady, hers. 1 year later, on the first warm day of spring, a single postcard arrived from Julian, postmarked from the prison facility. On the front, an ocean sunset. On the back, 3 short lines in his handwriting. Mom, I'm learning. Thank you for not letting me hide. I love you. Before deciding what those words meant for their future, she needed to walk the river path one more time and choose whether to carry the past forward or finally release it. 1 year later, the penthouse carried the scent of fresh paint and Sunday coffee brewing. The living room walls had settled into soft sage green, her choice alone. The old sectional sofa had been replaced by a smaller, lighter one positioned to face the river view rather than the television. Herbs still grew on the kitchen sill. Above the mantel hung the watercolor she had painted in class, a simple seascape where waves met sky without figures to interrupt the horizon. She turned 70 that spring. The milestone registered less as a marker and more as quiet evidence that time continued regardless. She walked the river path every morning, 5 miles, slower on damp days but consistent. Knees occasionally protested, yet the air remained clean and the route always led home. Julian had been released on parole 6 months earlier. He did not return to the penthouse. Instead, he rented a small apartment in Brooklyn and found steady work at a hardware store, regular hours, no supervisory title. They spoke every Sunday evening. Brief exchanges about her walks and classes, his job, and the stray cat that now claimed his doorstep. Alex surfaced only when Julian mentioned him first. Most weeks he did not. That Sunday morning in early May, the mailbox held the usual assortment: bills, a seed catalog, and one plain postcard. No envelope, just a stamp and her address in Julian's familiar slanted handwriting. The front showed the ocean at sunset, golden light spilling across dark water, the same stretch of coast where she had scattered the ashes a year earlier. She turned it over. 3 short lines. Mom, I'm learning. Thank you for not letting me hide. I love you. No signature required. She stood in the foyer holding the card, sunlight warming her shoulders. A neighbor passed in the hall and waved. She waved back. Inside, she placed the postcard on the kitchen island beside her coffee. She traced the words with one finger, sitting with them for a long while. That afternoon, she drove to the river path, not for the usual walk, but to sit on the bench near the water where she and Julian once fed ducks when he was small. The ducks still glided in lazy circles. She had no bread, but they remembered and drifted closer anyway. She took the postcard from her pocket and read it again. I'm learning. The phrase carried weight, not apology, not promise, but acknowledgement. The same acknowledgement she had offered him the night she replied, I know instead of I forgive. Forgiveness, she had learned, was not a single door opened once. It was a path walked daily, sometimes forward, sometimes circling, sometimes paused. Some days the path widened into sunlight, others it narrowed to a thread. Today it felt wide enough. She stayed until the sun dipped lower, painting the water gold. When she stood to leave, she tucked the postcard into her jacket pocket, not to conceal it, but to carry it. Back home, she placed it on the mantel beside the river stone and the watercolor postcard. Not a shrine, simply 3 small reminders of where she had been and where she stood now. That evening, she called Julian. He answered quickly. Mom, Julian, I received your postcard. A short silence. I wasn't sure you'd want it. I do, she said. Thank you. Another pause. I meant every word, he said quietly. I know. They spoke a little longer. About the new manager at the store who kept forgetting names, about the stray cat now sleeping indoors on rainy nights, about her upcoming painting retreat in Maine. Ordinary details. Safe ground. When the call ended, she did not feel the need for more words. She made dinner, pasta with tomato sauce she now selected without reference to anyone else's preference. She ate at the island with windows open, listening to birds settling for the night. Afterward, she walked to the service balcony. The soil over the buried items had thickened with green growth. She knelt briefly, brushed away stray leaves, then stood. No need to dig, no need to mark the exact spot. The past rested there, quiet, covered part of the ground. She went inside, locked the door, and turned off the lights one by one. In the bedroom, she opened the window to the cool night air. The bed was hers alone, sheets smoothed, pillows arranged to her liking. No empty side waiting. She slipped under the covers and closed her eyes. For the first time in 43 years, sleep arrived easily. No dreams of funerals. No reaching for a hand that had never truly been there. Only the soft rhythm of her own breathing, steady and sure. The next morning she woke to birdsong and sunlight. She made coffee, opened every curtain. The penthouse breathed with her, settling, steady, alive. She stepped outside into the new day. The path ahead lay open, and she was finally walking it. But even after the ashes, the postcard, the quiet mornings, one small question lingered. Could she ever truly release the empire Alex had built on deception? The answer arrived not in court or conversation, but in a single decision she made alone, under the same river sky where she had once scattered him. The river path smelled of salt and fresh grass on the first warm day of spring. Sophia walked the familiar 5-mile loop slowly, the Hudson flowing steadily beside her, gray-green under a sky washed pale blue, small whitecaps moving toward the sea. Her knees ached less these days. The rhythm of the walk had become as natural as breathing. Julian's postcard rested in her jacket pocket, edges already softening from repeated handling. She had read his 3 lines so often they felt etched in memory. "Mom, I'm learning. Thank you for not letting me hide. I love you." He had called the night before, not from the hardware store, but from a small cafe near his apartment. His voice carried a steadiness she had not heard in years. "Mom, I've been thinking about the company shares, the ones held in trust until my sentence is fully served." She waited. "I don't want them back," he continued. "Not the way they came. I want to sign them over to you completely. No conditions. Sell them, keep them, donate them, whatever you decide. I just don't want to benefit from what we did." The river wind tugged at her coat. A gull wheeled overhead, crying once. "Why now?" she asked. "Because I'm learning," he said quietly, "and part of that is letting go of what I don't deserve." She did not answer immediately. Let the silence stretch like the water stretching to the horizon. "I'll consider it," she said finally. "That's all I ask." They spoke a little longer, about the stray cat that now lived indoors, about her painting retreat in Maine, about how the city felt different when you stopped hiding from it. Ordinary details, safe ground. When the call ended, she felt neither lighter nor heavier, only present. That afternoon, she drove to the private dock where Alex once kept his yacht. The sign still read Hawthorne Marine Holdings, though the name had been retired months earlier. She parked by the water and walked to the pier's edge. The river lay calm, reflecting the sky in fractured silver. She took Julian's postcard from her pocket and looked at it once more. Then she folded it carefully and placed it inside the small wooden box she had brought, the same box that once held Alex's ashes. She opened the lid. Inside rested the postcard, Alina's note from the previous year, the pressed white orchid stem she had saved after the mausoleum visit, and tucked at the bottom, Alex's old wedding ring. Gold worn thin from decades, the inside still engraved with their initials and the date they stood on those courthouse steps. She held the ring between thumb and forefinger. It weighed less than memory suggested. For a long moment she stood there, wind moving her hair, the city humming behind her. She thought of the man who had worn this ring, the one who built empires and broke promises, who laughed with children who were not hers, who chose silence over truth. She thought of the woman who had worn the matching ring, the one who waited, who mourned, who followed, investigated, confronted, and finally chose herself. She tilted the box toward the water. The postcard caught the breeze first, fluttering out, spinning once, landing on the surface before sinking slowly. The pressed orchid followed, white petals scattering like confetti across the current. Alina's note drifted next, ink blurring as water claimed it. She held the ring last. For a single heartbeat, she almost slipped it back onto her finger, one final tether to the life she had lived. Then she opened her hand. The ring fell a small golden arc against the gray water, then vanished beneath the surface without sound. No words, no prayer, only the river doing what rivers have always done, accepting what is given and continuing onward. She closed the empty box, walked back to the car, and placed it in the trunk. When she started the engine, something inside her shifted, not dramatically, not with tears or revelation, but quietly, like a door closing softly behind her. Back in the penthouse that evening, she made dinner, pasta with tomato sauce chosen without anyone else's preference in mind. She ate at the island with windows open, listening to the city settle for the night. Afterward, she moved through the rooms deliberately. The bedroom, she cleared the last drawer, old cufflinks, a monogrammed handkerchief, a spare yacht key she had kept for no reason. She boxed them carefully and set them by the service elevator for donation. The living room, she rearranged the furniture again, moved the sofa closer to the window, added a reading chair from the guest room. The mantel now held 3 items, the river stone, the watercolor postcard, and new today, the empty wooden box from the dock. Not a memorial, simply proof that some endings arrive cleanly. Julian's old room. She left it untouched, childhood trophies, college pennants. One day he might want them, or he might not. That was his choice now. In the study, she found the hammer again. She used it once, deliberately, to take down the final framed photograph that had escaped earlier purges. The company gala, champagne raised, his arm around her like he would never let go. She wrapped it in newspaper and placed it in a box labeled Simply Past. She carried the box to the service balcony and set it beside the planter, where earlier items had long since disappeared under new soil. She did not dig another hole. She simply left it there, under the open sky. That night she slept through until morning, no dreams of funerals, no waking to reach for absence. When she woke, sunlight fell in warm bars across the floor. She made coffee. Opened every curtain. The penthouse felt lighter, quieter, but not empty. She sat at the island with her coffee and opened her laptop. For the first time, she searched not for traces of the past, but for herself. A gardening club that met Thursdays, a watercolor retreat in Maine next fall, a short trip to the mountains alone just to walk. She bookmarked them all. Later that week, the final restitution check arrived, modest but real. Enough to support whatever came next. She deposited it without ceremony. Then she walked to the balcony one last time before dark. The box still sat where she had left it. She opened it, looked at the gala photograph for a long minute. Then she placed it back inside, closed the lid, and carried the entire box to the building's recycling room. The truck came at dawn the next morning. From the window she watched the boxes lifted, crushed, carried away. No ghosts rose. No shadows lingered, only the quiet certainty that the past, like the river, had finally been given to the tide. The end.